This is the last episode of my official 2024 NBA mock draft post-lottery. I literally can't believe it. I've put so much work and effort into all of these videos. I want to thank you guys for the journey that we have, of course, had together. In today's video, we're putting up 11 through 4 in the picks. Again, we of course do know the lottery now. We know who's been, I guess, kind of stuffed around, who's done well and who hasn't. Again, I guess shout out Detroit Pistons. Very unfortunate for them. But again, it's very, very interesting, this whole entire draft, because it is very hard to know who's going to go where, just because of how this draft is being literally said to be one of the worst in NBA history, even being compared to the 2013 NBA draft. So it's pretty interesting. I don't know. Please don't yell at me in the comments if you don't like a pick, because again, this is one of the hardest mock drafts I've ever had to done. Definitely the hardest I've ever done on the channel or anything like that. So again, it's pretty interesting to, of course, see. And I guess without further ado, we're starting off with the 11th pick, which is going to the Chicago Bulls. And again, I've taken the guy who I think is absolutely perfect for this Bulls team, not just based on that he's, I think, probably best available, but also I think he just fits Chicago really well, and that actually happens to be Stephon Castle out of UConn, the 6'6" guard, who of course did just make it to the championship game in March Madness. Again, really good player who I think just fits this Chicago Bulls team perfectly. They're going to be in search for a guard, I believe, for most of the season. We know they have had Kobe White playing point guard minutes a lot, and then of course DeMar DeRozan really being like the point forward for the majority of the season as well. Again, Lonzo Ball is expected to hopefully play some basketball next season. We'll see how that goes, but they're going to be definitely looking for a guy, I think, to replace Lonzo, and have been looking for the last 2 to 3 years. And I think, of course, Stephon Castle really comes in and helps out. He's a really good defender, in my opinion. Oddly enough, good shot creator that a lot of people don't talk about enough. I don't think he's scoring, his points per game really defined how good he can be with that. Again, he averaged 11.1 points per game on 4.7 rebounds. There's being said that he's actually got comparisons a bit to a somewhat defensive type of Markelle Fultz, which I really like. There's actually a scout here that said I've gone back and forth in my opinion on Stephon Castle during the draft cycle, but I can finally have come to the conclusion that he's simply too good at too many things to not be highly ranked. He's one of the best defenders in the whole draft. He gets to the rim absolutely more than everyone in the draft, not named Isaiah Collier. And he's really come around as a passer and an off-ball mover. Again, the concerning thing with Stephon Castle does happen to be his shooting, where he is very, very below average. But we know Markelle Fultz has kind of been like that in his NBA career, unfortunately, which kind of sucks because he was known for his shot creation before he came into the draft. But he's been known as a guy who can play some decent defense, but can play make, can ball handle, but can also just be a good scorer with getting to the rim. And that's why I think that I really like that comparison of Castle to Markelle Fultz. The difference is with the Chicago Bulls is that the Bulls have a ton of scoring. In fact, they probably have some of the best scorers low-key in the NBA. They've of course got Zach LaVine, Kobe White, and DeMar DeRozan all there, and Nikola Vucevic as another option if you need some scoring as well. I think they just need a guy to come in and ball handle, play make, and defend. And if they just said to Castle and they were just like, look, that's all we need you to do. You don't need to come in and, again, be a good shooter or be a good scorer straight away, because we've already got a ton of that. We just need you to come in and play some defense and, again, be a good playmaker and floor general, just how Lonzo Ball was. I think he can exactly do that for the Chicago Bulls team, and it would absolutely make a ton of sense. Now, some people have also pointed out they don't believe Castle will actually drop to the 11th overall pick where I've got him at. Again, I did actually draft him in my last mock draft with this pick as well. Again, ESPN actually does have him ranked as the 9th best player overall in this draft. Again, I think he's really good with a ton of upside. And I said this in the last video, right? let's just say Lonzo Ball does come back from his injury. And again, prayers up, he does. The NBA is better when, of course, Lonzo Ball is playing good basketball. I think we've got to admit and got to kind of realize that in reality, Lonzo Ball is probably not going to play any more than 10 to 15 minutes per night, especially in his first couple games of the season. Again, I still believe he'll probably come back in the second half of the year, but even if let's just say he does come back in the first half of the year, there's no way I don't think he would play any more than 10 to 15 minutes per game. We got to remember, this man has legitimately missed like 3 years of basketball by the time he does return, which is absolutely crazy to think. Last time I think he played was like January 2022. But, you know, drafting a guy like Castle, who I think is going to be a big development guy for the Bulls, also helps Lonzo Ball out, because maybe Lonzo Ball could start and he can, you know, maybe play some stretches where he plays the first 6 minutes, 7 minutes of the game, and then he goes and takes a rests himself, maybe goes back on the bike, keeps things going. And while, of course, he's doing that, then Castle comes on. You've also got Kobe White and Caruso, if they keep him, to play some point guard minutes there too. So I think Castle and Lonzo could both handle the point guard position and really benefit each other out, because Lonzo is only going to be able to play probably 15 minutes per night, again, especially to start off with. Then you got Castle. He's probably going to be looking for at least 20 minutes per night as well, and some nights less, some nights more, depending how he's playing. Again, he's a development player, so they're going to really work well together, and I think Lonzo will be able to help him develop as well. He's kind of the player that that Castle wants to turn into, I would think. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that dynamic does go. But yeah, what an awesome flexibility for the Chicago Bulls, really. Again, because they had a ton of injuries to their bigger men as well, you had to play Caruso at shooting guard and all these other players bigger. The only player you could really play at point guard all season was Kobe White, and then you were looking for other guys like DeMar DeRozan to play some point guard. You go from that, like not a lot of flexibility and a lot of interchange with your point guard position, to all of a sudden now you've got, of course, Lonzo Ball there, you've got Kobe White there, you'd have Stephon Castle there. Javon Carter will probably play more point guard minutes next year instead of having to play bigger as well. Really, I think a ton of things are hopefully starting to work out for the Chicago Bulls, and again, I'm absolutely in love with this pick. So that's why I've got Stephon Castle going pick 11 to Chicago. Now, with the 12th overall pick, we have Oklahoma, who of course have one of the best young teams. I took this guy in last year's mock draft, and I'm going to take him again in this year's mock draft. Again, he didn't actually nominate for the draft last year, but he's in a similar spot, and that's actually Kyle Filipowski, who is ranked at number 16th by ESPN. I actually believe he's a bit better than that rank, in my opinion. It's been said that he's a really good and smart player who rarely makes mistakes on the court. Great passer and can function as a playmaker for teams in spurts. The shot is really solid, and he can be rumored to be pretty efficient with his conversion to the NBA. He's a good ball handler for a big man, and he's a pretty good switchable defender as well. Of course, there are some downsides with him. He's not a really good rim protector, so although he's switchable and can maybe move to the perimeter and whatnot, he's not really made to be going out and, defending that the rim excessively. He also isn't much of a presence in the paint, not only on the defense, but obviously on the scoring end as well. Some comparisons are saying he's a bit like Kelly Olynyk with a bit of Karl Anthony Towns, which is super interesting because the way I look at Filipowski, again, he's averaging 16.5 points per game and 8.5 rebounds. The reason a lot of people probably don't have him as better is because he's one of those weird players where it's hard to say what his position is in the NBA. Is he a center or is he a power forward? When realistically, he's kind of that weird mixture of both. He's like that secret position that just doesn't exist in the NBA. Again, that 4.5 position that just doesn't exist, right? A lot of players have been like that. Karl Anthony Towns, for a long time, was just not a good enough rim protector to really be a good defensive center. But then he was just so offensively good, and he could shoot the three as well to play the power forward. And some said he was too slow to be a power forward. All these type of things. Kevin Love in his like ladder of career is kind of in that as well. There's definitely a ton of other players here and there too, which just don't fit the power forward and they don't fit the center. They kind of fit in the middle. And I think Filipowski is really like that. But on this Oklahoma City team, I think there's benefits to him being like that because they're going to be bringing in some more centers, I think, this season. They're going to keep Chet Holmgren. They'll target Filipowski, I think, or a center in this draft. And then they'll probably go out and sign another one, right? Realistic thing is, I wouldn't be surprised if they played Filipowski on some minutes with Chet Holmgren. I know they like to go a bit like more athletic, like not necessarily smaller, that's the wrong word. They like to have an athletic guy usually at that power forward position. But honestly, maybe this is a good thing by the Oklahoma City Thunder by just bringing in some dude. Again, I've also heard some people say that Filipowski has like again traits of Jokic when he was coming into the league, which is also a pretty interesting thing to say. Again, comparing someone to one of the best centers we've ever seen in Nikola Jokic is always a little bit of a potential stretch. But we're not necessarily saying that he is Jokic. We're saying he's got similarities in his game like an Alperen Şengün does as well. Again, averaging 16.5 points per game, 8.5 rebounds on one of the best colleges in the world is a really, really good thing. And the fact is, this dude has the like playmaking and ball handling of a Nikola Jokic, of an Alperen Şengün. Again, and he can score. His defense is not that great. But with OKC, they've got a ton of defense. Can they afford to sacrifice some defense with that center position? I'm not necessarily too sure. But also, there's no reason not to try this. There's not too many other players that I think really fit this Oklahoma team as much as what Filipowski does in terms of looking for a big. They also like their big men to have the ball in their hands. They like OKC, like everyone on their team, to be able to play, make, and ball handle, right? Like we've seen stretches of the lineups they put out of SGA, of Josh Giddey, right, of Aaron Wiggins, etc., of these players that can all ball handle, they can all move the rock really, really well. Chet Holmgren as well, underrated. Jalen Williams. Everyone on this team can move the ball, right? Having a dude like Filipowski in there does also fit that, where they're going to bring in another guy who's not going to be afraid to move the ball, who's not going to be afraid to pass, who can also set someone up, right? So I think this is a brilliant pick by OKC. To me, it makes a lot of sense, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did go for this, and I'd actually be a little bit shocked if they didn't. So it'll be pretty interesting to see how this, of course, all does go. Now, with the 13th overall pick, we have the Sacramento Kings, and I've actually got them selecting Tijan Salon out of France. Again, the third French player to go in this draft. In my projection, I had Alexander Sarr at pick number 1, Zachary Rasache at number 2, and then, of course, now we've got Tijan at, of course, number 13. This France team is going to be absolutely stacked in a couple years, but it's funny because Salon is, I think, really interesting in this draft because obviously we know this is a weaker draft, and a lot of people are saying could it be like 2013, how it was an extremely weak draft, but there's going to be this one really good guy or two really good guys in there. A lot of people are saying this guy's got certain traits of Giannis in his game. Again, he's being said he's an extremely great athlete who is super fast and has great hops. Good three-point shooter with good mechanics and a high release. Very similar to how Giannis was when he was coming into the NBA. I think people really actually forget that Giannis had a pretty cool shooting form as he was coming into the league. It's being said that he's great at playing off ball, a really great cutter. He's elite in transition and can get down the court faster than absolutely anyone. He's got a great upside as a defender. His length, his agility, and his flashes of skill give him an elite upside as a defender. Some, of course, downsides do say that he is sometimes not good with the ball in his hands, but also that he can be really raw and will need a ton of time to develop and reach his full potential, similar to how, of course, Giannis was. Now, we're saying similarities to Giannis. We're not comparing him to Giannis, but the fact that there's similarities to Giannis is pretty cool, right? The thing is, though, he's mainly being compared to John Collins in the NBA, and a little bit of a low, but Chris Boucher. Again, those are some good players. I feel like people forget John Collins used to be an absolute freak. I don't know what happened to him, but when he was playing in Atlanta and he was averaging like the 19 points per game on like the 8 rebounds, as one of the best athletic power forwards in the game. He actually tried on defense back then too. Yeah, he was a good player, and I think a lot of people forget that. But if you're, again, with this draft, you're not necessarily extremely going to be prepared to take someone really good, because it's just not super available in this draft, unfortunately. But with Sacramento, I low-key feel like they're going to have one of the more interesting off-seasons out of every single team, because there are a ton of moves that Sacramento could make, and legitimately no one's talking about it, and it's actually kind of hurting my feelings. Low-key, like, again, they've got Malik Monk, who there are reports are saying could be in demand of 20 to 25 million per year, which if he left would suck. There's rumors that the Kings might be moving on from Harrison Barnes. Again, Davion Mitchell might be getting moved on from players like Alex Len and Chris Duarte as well. So they completely might have a very different roster next year, but still a roster that's like really young again, and have some good young players on there, especially if they move forward with a guy like Tijon Salon. So that's going to be interesting to think, right? And let's just say Salon doesn't become, you know, an elite player or a above average player, right? And he comes off the bench and he gives you good athleticism and great defense with decent shooting. That's really all you can ask for. But is there a reality where we see an interesting forward duo in the future of Keegan Murray and Salon together? Yeah, maybe, right? Like a starting five, let's just say Salon does develop and eventually maybe averages 12 points per game, 5 rebounds, a couple of assists on good shooting and great defense, and you got a starting five of De'Aaron Fox, Kevin Huerter, Salon, Keegan Murray, and Domantas Sabonis. Yeah, that's really, really awesome. But again, that's what you're hoping for. There is a chance that this man, again, takes ages to develop, as a lot of these reports are saying. Again, we know that it took like Giannis till his 3rd year to really show a lot. Again, he showed some stuff. Don't get me wrong, he showed some stuff. But his 3rd year was when he really like took that jump. And Salon, maybe he might be that similar player for the Sacramento Kings. And they know this, right? And there's still a big chance that they trade this pick. They're going to be doing a lot of moves that I think no one is talking about. If they've got pick 13, again, pick 13, Harrison Barnes and Davion Mitchell all on the block, and then obviously if Malik Monk accepts this massive deal from another team, but it has to be a sign and trade, that could be a chance to make some moves. Again, players like JaVale McGee, Alex Len, they're probably going to move on. Probably going to be making some moves here and there. Maybe even drafting a backup center with this pick as well. But I think Salon makes a lot of sense for them. They're going to be looking for some forwards next year, or next season, especially if they maybe move on from Harrison Barnes and whatnot. So there's a ton of different things they can do here. But I like this pick. I think he's a good player. And I also think, look, maybe he doesn't take as long to develop as what a lot of people think. But yeah, I think it also works really well, and he matches this Sacramento Kings team, in my opinion. Now, moving on to the 14th overall pick, we have the Portland Trailblazers, who, again, I previously had them taking Cody Williams with the 7th overall pick, who I think matches their team a lot. Again, I don't necessarily know if they fully need another guard, but considering a lot of the other good players around this pick are ranked as guards, I kind of had to take one here. And again, there's room to shuffle. They might move some players on that are guards later on anyway. But the best available by far here is Jacoby Walter. And I figured, look, I know, as I said, Portland have a lot of good young guards, but I don't know if you can pass up on this guy being a 6'5" wing, who's one of the best, I think, in this draft so far. It's being said he's a super dynamic 3-point shooter, one of the best movement shooters in this whole entire draft. Excellent at pulling up from threes on the catch and shoot and off dribble. He's a much better shot creator than what a lot of people give him credit for. Excellent motor, super competitive on both sides of the court, and he's a solid point of attack defender, right? I've seen some people compare this man a bit to Kevin Huerter and, of course, KCP. And for those of you who've been watching the channel for a long time, you know how much I love KCP. I think KCP is arguably the most underrated player nearly in the league. And I'm seeing all these role players getting like $20 to $25 million per season now. Like Duncan Robinson getting $19 million, right? Max Strus getting $17 million. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, KCP, in my opinion, is a lot better than both of these players. He's a two-time championship starting wing for a reason, who literally averages 11 points per game. One of the best defenders in the whole entire league on over 40% from three nearly every single type of year. If you can get a dude like Ja'Kobe Walter who is going to maybe be something like that, then my God, you've got something pretty coming along in, of course, Portland, right? If you can maybe make that happen, and you've got like a trio of course, you know, Shaedon Sharpe at your 2, Scoot Henderson at the 1, and then Ja'Kobe Walter at the 3, the athleticism and defense that one day could be is absolutely beautiful. I still have a lot of hope that Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe are going to develop into being very good defenders in this league, as, again, they're extremely athletic, and having an athletic trio like this, who, again, they shoot the 3-ball pretty good. Scoot Henderson's got some work to do, but I just think this makes a ton of sense for Portland down, you know, the road, right? Again, it's going to take a ton of time to develop. I think Scoot Henderson might need another season or 2 before we really start to see what this man can truly accomplish in the NBA. He might prove me wrong, though. As I've mentioned earlier, Darius Garland, in his first season of being in the NBA, was rated like the 2nd worst player in the whole entire league. By season 4, he was a top 10 point guard, nearly a top 5, literal all-star, and again, even played a terrific season with Donovan Mitchell. This most recent season, not too much, but if he does get traded to Pelicans or whatever happens there, I can guarantee he'll go back to all-star form most likely. Scoot Henderson will take some time, but having a dude like a Ja'Kobe Walter to put alongside Scoot Henderson, a guy he can play make to, a really good shooter who's going to put up some really good defense as well, makes a ton of sense. I also like Kevin Huerter because I think Kevin Huerter's gone underrated for a long time as like an off-ball type of mover. Again, it's one thing to be a good shooter, but you got to be a guy who can move around screens. You got to be a guy who can move on off the ball, right? And get open. Find yourself open. And this is what a guy like Ja'Kobe Walter, I think, can do, being compared to a man like Kevin Huerter. There's some other comparisons here too. Desmond Bane kind of being like the ceiling of a man who maybe could average like 22 points per game one day as a really good shot creator, really good shooter, and a decent defender as well. I guess that's what you're kind of hoping for Ja'Kobe Walter. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. There's a lot to go into this. Again, I know that the Portland Trail Blazers have a lot of guards. It's still like, well, they've got Anthony Simons there. What do they do with Anthony Simons? Do they keep him because he's arguably their best player? Or do you shop him off for some picks and really build around Scoot Henderson, really build around Shaedon Sharpe, and maybe a guy like Ja'Kobe Walter? What do you do? Again, there's a ton of different things they can do here. They might not take Walter because they've already got a ton of guards. But at the end of the day, as I said, by far at this pick, he's the best available, right? And if you're looking just for development, sometimes you just say screw it and you just take the best guy available, because even though you might not be positional for your team, you never know what can happen in 2 years and who might get traded, who might leave, like all these different type of things. Not saying anyone would leave this Portland team, but you guys know what I mean, right? So there's a ton of different things going on with this, and that's why I have the Portland Trail Blazers selecting Ja'Kobe Walter with the 14th overall pick. But of course, I'd very much like to hear all of your thoughts and opinions on this down below. What do you guys think of my official 2024 NBA mock draft? Did you guys like it? Did you agree with all my picks or did you not? I'd like to hear what you guys have to say in the comment section down below. Again, subscribe to the channel for less NBA content, NBA news. Also, don't forget to go and check out my gaming channel, my IRL/flowing channel. I don't feel like none of you guys, or enough of you guys, I should say, even know that exists. So go check them out. They're also going to be linked in the description down below. But as I was saying, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment. And I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.